glowing screen of her phone, the words from her husband's illicit messages burning into her mind. How could he still be in love with another woman? How could he continue to betray her trust, despite their efforts to salvage their marriage? It had been a long journey for Sarah and Tom, 20 years filled with laughter, tears, and the joys of raising their 2 children. But beneath the surface, cracks had begun to form early on, when Tom's infidelity reared its ugly head not once, but twice. Each time, Sarah had chosen to forgive, to believe that their love was strong enough to withstand any storm. But now, faced with the harsh reality of her husband's ongoing affair, Sarah couldn't help but question everything she once held dear. The counseling sessions they attended together seemed futile in the wake of Tom's continued betrayal. Was it all just a facade, a desperate attempt to cling to a semblance of normalcy for the sake of their children? As she scrolled through the messages, Sarah felt a wave of anger and sadness wash over her. The words stung like daggers, each confession of love for another woman driving a wedge deeper between them. And yet, amidst the pain, there lingered a stubborn glimmer of hope, a tiny voice whispering that perhaps their love was worth fighting for. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Sarah found herself growing weary of the endless cycle of hurt and forgiveness. The comments from strangers on social media echoed in her mind, urging her to break free from the chains of a loveless marriage, to reclaim her happiness and her dignity. And so, one fateful evening, as Tom slept soundly beside her, Sarah made a decision. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone and composed a message, the words flowing from her heart with a clarity she hadn't known she possessed. "I can't do this anymore," she wrote, her fingers shaking as tears blurred her vision. "I deserve better, and so do our children. I'm leaving, Tom. I'm taking back control of my life, and I won't let you drag me down any longer." With a deep breath, Sarah hit send, the weight of her decision lifting from her shoulders like a burden too long carried. And as she slipped quietly out of bed and gathered her things, she knew that though the road ahead would be fraught with uncertainty, she was finally free to chase after the happiness she so desperately deserved. As the first light of dawn broke through the darkness, Sarah stepped out into the world, her heart heavy with sorrow, yet brimming with a newfound sense of hope. And though she couldn't predict what the future held, one thing was certain: she would never again sacrifice her own happiness for the sake of a love that was never meant to be. Sarah sat in her dimly lit living room, the harsh glow of her phone illuminating the anguish etched on her face. She scrolled through the comments, each one a painful reminder of the reality she had been trying so desperately to ignore. The words cut deep, slicing through the thin veneer of denial that had shielded her from the truth for so long. Her children, her precious daughters, were being raised in a home tainted by infidelity, a toxic environment where betrayal was accepted as the norm. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she thought of the lessons she was inadvertently teaching her daughters, the message that it was somehow acceptable to stay in a loveless marriage, to endure the pain of constant betrayal for the sake of appearances. And her sons? What of them? What example was she setting for them, allowing their father to trample over her heart time and time again without consequence? The thought made her sick to her stomach, and the weight of her own complicity bearing down on her like a leaden weight. With a trembling hand, Sarah reached for her phone, her heart heavy with resolve. She couldn't continue to live this lie, to sacrifice her own happiness on the altar of a marriage that was beyond repair. It was time to break free from the chains of betrayal, to reclaim her dignity and her self-respect. With each word she typed, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders, the burden of years of silent suffering finally being released into the void. She owed it to herself, to her children, to walk away from this toxic relationship and forge a new path forward, one filled with hope and possibility. As she hit send on her final message, a sense of liberation washed over her, a feeling of freedom she hadn't known in years. She was taking back control of her life, refusing to be defined by the actions of a man who had long since lost sight of what it meant to love and honor his wife. And as she gathered her courage and prepared to face the uncertain future that lay ahead, Sarah knew deep in her heart that she was making the right decision. For herself, for her children, and for the promise of a brighter tomorrow free from the shadow of betrayal.